Hello and welcome back to Call to Camera, those programmes in which you send us in works of art that have given you solace, sustenance in isolation. This week, it's landscapes and seascapes. In these particularly difficult times, landscape and seascape seem to be all the more emotive as subjects. They're certainly enormously popular with you. I think they represent all sorts of things, but refuge, optimism, health even. We've had at least 80 landscapes and seascapes. And I have to say, landscape is hugely important to me. These meadows around are ones that I've been working on for 15 years, and finally they're bearing fruit. This, if you want, is my work of art coming from a guy who can't paint. One thing that is very clear is that the idea of landscapes and seascapes is not just one big genre, as they say, one big subject. It can be subdivided. And there are distinct areas of interest amongst you all. One particular one is the idea of nature in the wild, that is, nature not troubled by the footprint of man or woman. It is nature in the raw, if you want. Some of the greatest art produced in this area was in the 19th century in America, the Hudson River School, who produced these fantastic, sometimes panoramic images of the New World. But you're also interested in your new worlds, and sometimes rather rough ones as well. So that's nature in the wild. That's nature without any people there. But there's also another taste. In fact, it's almost like talking about food, this. For landscape where there is evidence of human existence, either a single figure or possibly, something that a human has left or brought about. One of the greatest artists in this romantic tradition of man or woman witnessing the great sort of unfurling scene of nature in front of them is Caspar David Friedrich, a German painter working in the late 18th and early 19th century. And he was able to, through placing figures in front of landscape, give it the feeling of theatre. And you also have shown an interest for the figure, the human existence, and a little bit of theatre too. So that was man or woman just sort of touching the edges, but there's also another type of landscape, and that's the cosy type. That is where nature envelops you. It's the sort of bucolic dream, the rural idyll. And this, I think, goes back particularly to 18th century art, the work of Thomas Gainsborough. I actually owned a couple of versions of a very famous painting called The Cottage Door by Gainsborough, in which you have figures dwarfed by this sort of cathedral of branches above them. It's a sort of, I suppose, idea of nature with a little bit of comfort, something you can identify with, domesticated nature and greenery. For some people, landscape and seascape is just about escape. It's about getting away. It's the idea of the holiday. That's the type of image that they want. And the concept of travel and painting and the pictorial representation of it goes back to the Grand Tour in the late 17th century. In the early 19th century, Turner was fantastic at being able to capture places like Venice and its exquisite light. And on the subject of light, in the late 19th century, the Impressionists managed to capture that wonderful sort of South French yellow light, that sunlight. You could almost feel the warmth of it. Artists like Monet. But you too love your escapes in the form of painted holidays or the sea, or something that just evokes the idea of getting away from it all. And for a few of you, the idea of seascape and landscape is actually pure and simple, just about boats, about ships, about getting away. And what better thing to do either now or after isolation. Thank you so much for watching these lovely reveals of your art of landscape and seascape at home. We have other subjects to come, and I'm much looking forward to returning. Thank you for watching. Take care in isolation. Goodbye.